It is fascinating how the most invisible things in our lives often carry the heaviest weight. You walk into a house on a sweltering summer day, the cool air hits your face, and you do not give a single thought to the chemical magic making it happen. But right now, those invisible gases are at the center of a massive political and economic storm.
That is exactly right. We're talking about the May 22 executive action, a sweeping move by the Trump administration to strike down the Biden-era refrigerant regulations. On the surface, it sounds like a dry, bureaucratic policy shift. But when you look closer, it is a regulatory earthquake that impacts everything from the price of your next air conditioner to the global climate debate. It is a classic case of regulatory whiplash.
Regulatory whiplash is the perfect term for it. Let us break down exactly what happened on May 22. For the last few years, the trajectory was clear. Phase out hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, because they are incredibly potent greenhouse gases, and transition the industry to greener alternatives. Now that engine has been thrown into reverse. What is the immediate political and legal reality of this rollback?
To understand the sheer scale of this, we have to look at it through a political and legal lens. The previous administration aligned with international agreements, like the Kigali Amendment, to aggressively phase down HFCs. The mandate forced manufacturers to innovate. The May 22 executive action essentially rips up that timeline. The core argument for the reversal is deregulation, cutting red tape to lower manufacturing costs and boost domestic economic freedom. But legally, it throws the industry into absolute chaos. You cannot just flip a switch and undo years of compliance planning without ending up in a labyrinth of court battles. Environmental groups are already mobilizing, and state-level regulators are threatening to enforce their own strict rules, which creates a fragmented, nightmarish market for manufacturers.
That brings up a massive contradiction. You would think big business would celebrate deregulation, but from what I understand, the energy sector and HVAC manufacturers are actually the ones holding their heads in their hands right now. Why is the industry pushing back against a policy that supposedly saves them money?
Because certainty is far more valuable to a billion-dollar industry than temporary deregulation. If we run a basic strengths and weaknesses analysis on this move, the administration's intended strength is lowering immediate production costs. But the glaring weakness is stranded assets. These major manufacturers have already poured billions of dollars into research, development, and retooling their factories to produce next-generation, eco-friendly coolants. They completely shifted their strategic objectives to dominate the future green tech market. By rolling back the rules, the government is essentially punishing the companies that complied and rewarding those that lag behind. It's like training for years to run a marathon, and right at the starting line, the officials announce it's actually a swimming competition.
Wow. That is incredibly frustrating for those companies. And it completely undermines their long-term strategies. If American companies pause their green innovation because the domestic rules are relaxed, do they not risk losing their competitive edge on the global stage?
Absolutely. That is the biggest economic threat here. The rest of the world is moving forward with the HFC phase down. If American companies revert to cheaper, older technology for the domestic market, they cannot export those products to Europe or parts of Asia. They lose their global market share. So, ironically, a policy designed to protect American business might actually isolate it.
Let us pivot to the people actually buying these units, the everyday consumer. The primary justification for this May 22 rollback is that green regulations drive up the cost of appliances, and reversing them will save families money. Is there any truth to that? Will my next refrigerator or AC unit actually be cheaper?
In the very short term, possibly. Older technology is cheaper to produce because the research and development costs were paid off decades ago, but it is a deceptive kind of savings. First, older refrigerants are becoming obsolete globally, meaning the chemicals to service those older units will eventually become scarce and incredibly expensive. Second, the newer units are vastly more energy efficient. So, you might save a couple of $100s at the checkout counter, but you will pay for it over the next 10 years through higher monthly electricity bills. It is a classic transfer of cost from the point of purchase to the lifespan of the product.
So it is essentially a mirage of savings. Before we dive into the environmental fallout and the deeper climate debates surrounding this, I want to take a quick moment to share something with our listeners who love deep dives like the one we are doing right now.
Go right ahead.
If you are enjoying this level of analysis, you need to check out The New Sentinel. The New Sentinel is a podcast dedicated to providing in-depth discussions and deep dives into a wide array of topics. From the glitz and glamour of pop culture to the strategic intricacies of military operations, they really cover it all.
It is incredibly rare to find a show that can seamlessly transition from analyzing a blockbuster movie to dissecting global security threats, but they do it brilliantly.
Exactly. Each episode is thoughtfully crafted to offer listeners a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter, featuring expert interviews, detailed analysis, and engaging storytelling. Whether you are a pop culture enthusiast or someone with a keen interest in global security, The New Sentinel has something for everyone. So make sure to tune in, share, comment, and like to stay informed and entertained. And if you are a business owner looking to reach a highly engaged audience, you can advertise your business on their podcast by reaching out to claybead@yahoo.com. Again, that is claybedder@yahoo.com.
Highly recommended. They really know how to unpack a complex narrative, which is exactly what we are trying to do with this refrigerant policy.
Spot on. So, bringing it back to the May 22 executive action, we have covered the political whiplash, the industry frustration, and the consumer illusion. But we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, the climate. HFCs are not just slightly bad for the environment, they are super pollutants. How devastating is this rollback from an ecological perspective?
It is monumental. To put it in perspective, HFCs can be thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide when it comes to trapping heat in the atmosphere. They were originally introduced to replace ozone-depleting substances, which was a great success story for the ozone layer. But we essentially traded a hole in the sky for a blanket over the Earth. The Biden-era rules were projected to prevent up to 0.5 degrees Celsius of global warming by the end of the century. In climate science, 0.5 degree is the difference between manageable adaptation and catastrophic tipping points.
0.5 degree from just one sector of chemicals. That is staggering.
It is. And the May 22 reversal throws that entire projection out the window. The climate debate here is deeply philosophical. We are dealing with a policy that prioritizes immediate, localized economic deregulation over long-term global ecological stability. It raises a very uncomfortable question. Are we willing to literally heat up the planet just to keep our living rooms artificially cool for a fractionally lower upfront cost?
That is a haunting way to frame it. Cooling the living room while setting the roof on fire. And it seems like policy analysts and energy experts are completely polarized on this. When you look at the expert interviews coming out of the energy sector, there is a clear divide between those looking at quarterly profits and those looking at decadal survival.
Precisely. You have some deregulation advocates arguing that the free market, not government mandates, should drive the transition to green tech. They believe that if green refrigerants are truly better, consumers will naturally choose them. But environmental economists counter that argument by pointing out that the climate does not have time for the slow, organic shifts of the free market. The damage done by HFCs is cumulative. Every year we delay the phase-out, we lock in decades of accelerated warming.
It is a profound failure to account for negative externalities. The cost of the environmental damage is not factored into the price tag of the air conditioner. Society pays for it later through extreme weather events, failing infrastructure, and public health crises.
Exactly. And that ties back into the broader social and technological implications. Technologically, we have the solutions. We have advanced climate-friendly refrigerants ready to go. The barrier is no longer scientific, it is purely political. By reversing the regulations, we are artificially extending the life of a sunset technology. We are anchoring ourselves to the past instead of bridging into the future.
It really feels like a moment of regression. It is fascinating, in a somewhat dark way, how a single executive action on May 22 can ripple out so far. It disrupts global trade, confuses massive manufacturing supply chains, creates an illusion of savings for the consumer, and quietly accelerates a global climate crisis.
It is the butterfly effect in the form of federal policy. A stroke of a pen in Washington alters the chemical composition of the atmosphere and shifts the financial strategies of multinational corporations. It proves that in our modern, hyper-connected world, there is no such thing as an isolated policy. Everything is tethered together.
Which makes it all the more critical that we actually pay attention to the fine print of these regulations. It is easy to tune out when politicians start talking about hydrofluorocarbons and phase-down schedules. It sounds like technical jargon. But that jargon dictates the air we breathe, the economy we work in, and the future we are leaving behind.
The invisible forces, just like you said at the beginning. We do not see the gases, and often we do not see the immediate consequences of the policies that govern them, but they are shaping our reality every single second. The reversal of these rules is not the end of the story. It is just the beginning of a very chaotic chapter for the industry and the environment.
A chaotic chapter indeed. It leaves us with a lot to reflect on. Are we structuring our society for the convenience of today or the survival of tomorrow? As the dust settles from the May 22 action, the real cost of this rollback will slowly reveal itself in our markets, in our homes, and in our atmosphere. We will keep tracking this ripple effect as it unfolds. Until next time, keep questioning the invisible forces around you.